Hi everyone and welcome to my studio. I'm Diane and today I've decided that we're going to have a little go at painting some forget-me-nots. Now the forget-me-nots are out in profusion here in France, and so we went and we picked a bunch from the hedgerow this morning just to use for reference materials, and I'm sorry that these ones are going to sacrifice their lives in order to make a painting. But there's plenty more where these ones came from. They're flowering everywhere here at the moment. And before I started to paint them, I needed to take a quick look at them to see how they're constructed. And so I noticed that the flowers are obviously blue, but they've got little yellow centres, and they've got these long oval leaves with a very definite vein down the middle, and they're sort of mid-green, I suppose. They've got these little pods here. Well, they're not pods, they're the dead, well I suppose they are, they're the seed pods, which alternate going up the stem there, and that the stems go a little bit violet towards the end, and some of the flowers in fact are even on the pink side. Can't quite see any on this one that are pink, but some of them, there we are, no, those are buds. Anyway, a few of them are, here we are, look. This one is pink. So having sort of observed what they actually look like at close quarters, with the help of my daughter, who is much more observant about these things than me, I tend to sort of go, oh, blue flowers, and she'll say, oh yeah, but look, that's mauve, and then they've got this little thing here and that thing. I think she's got a much better eye for this kind of thing than an engineer ought to have. I always thought she should have been an artist, but I suppose she will be one day. Okay, and so for this painting, I'm going to use, this is going to be watercolour, but kind of multimedia as well. And I'll tell you how that's going to work in a sec. I'm going to use various implements, probably, almost certainly I will be using my toothbrush for some spatter at the end. This is a sword liner brush, which gives a nice flicky effect, and I might use that for some of the foliage perhaps. Obviously a pencil, this is a Derwent Graphic F, so that's kind of fairly hard but not too hard. I might use this brush, which is a very small squirrel hair mop, Isabey type, and my usual two brushes. Because the flowers on this are quite small, I'm going to go for a number 5 and a number 9. That's probably all I'll need. And then I've looking at the colour of the flowers, I can see that the paints that we're going to need would be alizarin crimson and ultramarine. Ultramarine is the base colour of these flowers, but it has got a slight pinkish tint to it. Then we've got olive green and lemon yellow. But the secret ingredient to this is going to be watercolour pencils. And as you know from my other video the other day, I recently acquired a set of 100 Faber Castel Albrecht Durer watercolour pencils. So I'm going to select the appropriate colours for this painting from there. So we have this beautiful that could be called, I suppose, forget-me-not blue, maybe. What does it say on it? It says ultramarine. Well, there you go, you see, I've chosen ultramarine to paint them with, so I honestly hadn't checked that. And there's a little bit of violet going on in there, so we will pick this one, which is called Violet. And then the olive green, we're going to find olive green, which is going to be probably something like this one. That should do. That says moss green, good enough. And lemon yellow, and I think we're going to use a warmer yellow and a cooler yellow. This one is called Citron, and this one is called Light Chrome. So that's our palette. That's our watercolour equivalents. So let's get started. I'll put those to one side for a minute. I've done the sketch here based on these flowers. I've also done some preliminary colour work, and I've been playing with ways of doing these flowers, and I'm going to show you what I decided on in the end. Oh, we're going to put a little bee here. So just check that the tape's working. Tape. Oh. Okay, right. So yes, now these flowers, I've decided to do a sprig of forget-me-nots, and the flowers are very small. And when I started to do my practice flowers, I felt like an elephant trying to tightrope, because they're so delicate and so tiny, and even my small brushes just seem to have a very too heavy kind of effect. So then I tried to do them with a smaller brush, and I wasn't really very happy with that. This is okay. But then I thought, oh, I know, let's do it a different way. Let's do something a little bit different. So I turned to my new acquired pencils. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some of them in watercolour pencil, and then I'm going to wet them. I'm going to do some of the flowers in watercolour pencil, and I'm not going to wet them, or parts of them, and I'm going to do the leaves in a similar way. So the first thing I'm going to do is just very lightly draw in the stems, so you'll be able to see them before I will paint those. So the main stem is going to curve up like that. Then we've got the leaves with their centre veins. Now, it has to be said that since I started doing YouTube, I've had to, or I haven't had to, but I have experimented with lots of new ideas, and very often what I'm doing for you here on camera is the very first time I've ever done it like that, so to speak. So you'll have to bear with me, and if it doesn't work, then we'll say, oh well, never mind, and we'll move on. So that's the lines for the basis of the stems. Now, as I said, towards the ends of the stems, it goes rather mauvish. So just to give myself the indication so I don't forget, I'm going to draw in violet the ends of the stems where they presumably are, I don't know, they've got the colour of the flowers in them, haven't they? And the little, where the dead flowers, where the flowers that have died are, there's a kind of little pod thing. Okay, so that's that. And then, so now I'm going to take my ultramarine pencil, and where shall we start? Shall we start in the middle or at the top? Let's start at the top. So if you, when you're using watercolour pencils, if you draw a line first and then fill it in, that line will probably stay with you. It probably won't melt into the paper in the way that you might want it to. So I found this out just earlier today. So better than that is to just sort of fill it in without drawing the line first, which is why I drew the outlines first. So I'm just basically filling in, and this may not look good. On the other hand, it might, so we'll see. So there we are, that's a few, and I'm going to add a little bit of violet to it, and then we're going to see what happens when we wet it. This is going to vary, the effect you get is going to vary enormously depending on the paper you use. This is a cold press, but it's quite smooth, but not really smooth. I mean, it's just a bit smoother than some. Okay, so now I'm going to dampen the petals, and I don't feel quite like an elephant on a tightrope here, because I feel like I've got much more control over the shape of the petals, because I'm just wetting them. And I think this could be quite addictive. I think I could get quite carried away with this, to be honest. And I'm just going to wet the stem that I drew. We'll probably end up darkening some of this, but we might not. It depends, you know, what you like, whether you like something to be very delicate or whether you prefer it to be a bit more solid. But this is such a delicate flower, isn't it? So, I mean, that's really sweet, but I think we need a few more because they come in little clumps. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a bunch of little buds. So that's 2, so we'll do another flower sideways on there. And yeah, oops, wrong brush. I do heartily suggest that you try some of this out, because I know what we women are like. We like to do things with a bit of detail sometimes. You know, don't want everything to be splashy and impressionistic like some people do it all the time. I have no doubt that my particular style of painting will evolve as I continue to do this work here on YouTube. Because I tell you what's something really funny, you wouldn't believe this, when I watch the videos back, sometimes I think, oh my God, why did I do that? As I see myself making what I consider to be perhaps not the best judgment call. So, yeah. So I'm learning. In other words, what I mean to say is I'm learning by watching myself. When you come back and you watch it again, you think, oh, yes, that wasn't a good idea. Could have done that better. So I'm going to shade in this leaf here. And you can see then the difference between what I did there. And going back to the brush, I suddenly felt completely out of control there with the paint. Oh my God, you know. I can see why people like painting with watercolour pencils. I never really understood that before, but that's because I hadn't tried it. I hate it when people say, I don't think that's a good idea. I've never done it myself, but I really don't think you need to do that. You know, oh no, of course you don't need to press to what do you call it, stretch paper. I've never done it myself, but I'm sure it's not necessary, some people say. And I have to laugh because, you know, well, sometimes you probably need to stretch the paper or you would benefit from it, and sometimes not. So it's not that easy to say, really. I'm going to, I quite like the way that happened. I'm just going to emphasize the little buds on the end there. And yeah, I'm going to just give myself a little bit more violet on these stems. For those of us who feel that watercolour is completely uncontrollable, I have a feeling that using watercolour pencils in this way could well be liberating. Yes. So let's go for another little bunch of flowers here. And all I'm doing is, I feel like I'm 6 years old again. Can't be bad, can it? I'm just drawing little ovals I'm not doing lines, I'm just doing ovals, and then I'm calling that a flower. And then I'm going to come in again and, oh no, I'm going to put a little bit more violet in there. And let's have one that's all violet. Isn't that sweet? When Tamsin comes to do the editing on this, she's going to have to get the camera really in quite close, because this is much smaller than what we normally do. So she'll need to be zooming in a bit. And I wish my fairy godmother would give me a few £100 so I could buy myself a new phone. That would be really handy. I'm still, you know, you're going to laugh, I'm working with a iPhone 6. I think they went out with the Arc. But, I mean, it's okay. It's not too bad. Yeah. The good thing is, if you pick up a little bit of paint in your brush, you can use that as well. And I'm strictly trying not to be tempted to use the paints at this particular moment in time. I'm going to go back to these ones now they're a bit drier and put the yellow centers in. And then blue here. Thank you ever so much, everybody, for your lovely comments on the last video, on the Bluebell one. It was really nice. Lots of lovely things said, and very helpful too, to have an idea what people enjoy and why, and so on and so forth. It really is very useful for us so that we can make things that you want to see. And so here I'm just trying, where I've wet it, I'm just trying a little bit of painting into the water to see what happens, and that comes out much darker, doesn't it? Isn't that interesting? So that's going to be another option. So let's try that, so that we've got plenty of contrast going, different techniques. Let's try that there and see how that goes. Okay, interesting. And then we'll go back to the dry one. And then we'll wet that. It is a different effect. It's a little bit more granular. And this can be just painted with what's on my brush. And then maybe we'll put a little bit of violet one over here. Okay, so let's make this one wet, and so that'll be quite a nice dark one. And we'll do this one dry. And then another little one over here. your violet one. And do the yellow centres. I'll put the affiliate links to all the different things that I'm using in the description below, and I'll try to remember. Oh yes, that's right, on the website, if you go to the website dianeantone.com, you will find something relevant to this. I don't know what yet because I haven't written it. Okay, shall we do the bee? Let's see how he works out if we use pencils. This is black. That's a good start. Let us colour him black. And yellow, and I'm going to use the same yellow. Let's see what happens when we wet him. Oh, look at that. Okie dokie. Oh, well, I'll let that dry before I wet the yellow. And we'll just paint his wings with a bit of grey. And his legs we will paint with the pencil. There we are, one bee. Okay, so now a few more of these flowers here. I was thinking I might leave some of them completely just like that with the texture. So I'll leave that one and I'll wet that one. I was talking the other day about when we were doing the what do you call them? Bluebells, that I always think of Shakespeare when I think of bluebells, and somebody, nice lady, gave me a quote from Shakespeare talking about harebells, which are probably the same flower. So Shakespeare was talking about harebells in this poem that he wrote, sonnet or whatever. And I was curious enough to look it up online, and I discovered, and I didn't know this and I should have, that there are references in Shakespeare to something like 150 different plants, and that because of that, around the world, especially in America, in places like Boston and New York, there are all of these Shakespeare gardens which seek to have all of the plants that Shakespeare talked about in them. And I thought, how lovely. I didn't know that. I think they're in England too. I should be surprised if they weren't. But yeah, what a lovely idea. Oh, it's raining. Oh, crumbs. Hang on, I have to stop. Okay, so sorry about the background noise. There's probably going to be some raindrops on the roof here because it's a metal roof and it suddenly decided to rain, which is great because we've had a drought for the whole of the last month. We haven't had a drop of rain, and with 15 sheep and no grass for them to eat, this has been a bit of a juggling act, to say the least. But so I'm not going to complain for once about the rain. But anyway, hopefully it won't interfere with the sound on the video. Now I'm just coming in now, and I've quickly So that this doesn't get too boring for you, I've coloured in some of the little flowers already, and now I'm just going to be dropping the water in to show you how that works for the last few. And then as soon as I've done this, I think I'm going to use my watercolours and a brush to do the leaves with the green leaves of this plant. But I really like the way these little stems are working out by just drawing a line in pencil and then wetting it afterwards. You get this nice, soft, slightly fuzzy effect. On this paper anyway, you do. I'm not sure if it would be the same on all papers, but on this paper it works like that. I know paper is a big mystery to all of us actually, and I was looking on Amazon last night at various different options to recommend to people that they might want to try. And I think one of the problems, judging by the comments on the bottom of each listing, seems to me that quality has gone down because a lot of people are saying, oh, this paper is wonderful, marvellous, and then you look to see when they wrote that and it was 2017, and more recently people are saying it's absolute garbage, I'll never buy it again, it gave me a nervous breakdown, I'm going to... Anyway, so yeah, you need to watch out with that, which I suppose is one good reason for sticking with the more expensive ones, which I think have better quality control than some of the Chinese ones. Sorry, don't want to sound as if I don't like the Chinese, I think they're wonderful, but, you know, not entirely reliable. Okay, so that's all the flowers done, I think, for the minute. And so now I need to put the leaves in. And I'm coming in here with a bit of lemon yellow, and then I'm going to drop into that, not quite so much as that. I'm going to drop in some olive green. And do the same here. Only maybe this time I'll use a little bit of ultramarine. And maybe a tiny bit of... oh, suddenly the paints all seem incredibly strong. Huh, that's interesting in itself. So, okay, so in that case, I need to be very careful with my colours so that I don't overwhelm the delicacy of the first stage that we've done. So, be a little bit wary there. I know what I'm missing. I'm missing a mixing palette. Yeah, talking about paper. So I put a couple of recommendations on the website with links to Amazon for you to look at in case you're interested in sourcing a slightly different paper. But yeah, as I say, there's something to be said, isn't there, for going with the tried and trusted. Okay, now let me see, what do we think? I think that's not too bad. I think maybe we might want to emphasize a little bit of the blue here where it's still damp. It's very interesting the way the pencil works completely differently when the paper is wet. Much more powerful, much more powerful. And then when you put it onto wet paper, it really doesn't want to move as much. So yeah, you have to be careful what you're doing, otherwise you might end up making a mess. Well, I need to be careful what I'm doing. You might have better experience with watercolour pencils than me. And my experience is 0, so it's a fairly good chance of that. Right, now I'm going to do some spatter. A nice relaxing spatter moment. And what colour shall I spatter? Does it matter what I spatter? I don't know. Let's give it a go. Blue, I think. A little bit of blue in the sky. Out of the way, microphone. It does add a little bit of life to a painting, this. It's a magical touch, I think. I had a painting for sale. I had it for sale for about 3 years, and I put it on eBay. It was on eBay for months, years. I reduced the price, I put the price up, did everything. Nobody wanted to buy it. So then one day I suddenly thought, oh, I know, I'll put some spatter on it. So I put some spatter on it and it sold the next day. Yep, hope it wasn't you that bought it. Okay, and then down here in the region of the leaves, I'm going to, oh, I feel so much more relaxed now. I've got a brush in my hand. These pencils, they can be a little bit inhibiting. Okay, so we just have some calligraphic marks down there. Probably ruining it as far as you're concerned, but never mind. And if that's a bit too much, you can soften it up a bit, like that. And as we know, when watercolour dries, you can hardly see it. It goes all faint. And we should have a vein down the middle of some of these leaves, because they do have a very distinct vein. I have to say, this is one way of making an hour pass really quickly. And those bits of shadow will fade a bit. Do you think we need 2 bees? I'd really like to do another bee, but I think it would spoil it. I think it might be too much of a good thing. And I think, as final touch, I think I'm going to make these ones a little bit. There's lots of ways you could do this in lots of different ways. You could have lots of pencil on it if you wanted to, couldn't you? You could not only have, you could have like uncoloured in flowers like that, which could look quite nice as well. A different style that would be. Okay, so there we are. Oh, don't forget the veins on the bee's wings. There we are, just finish him off. Don't forget to leave comments underneath if you feel like it, and if you've got a spare like going, I wouldn't mind 1 or 2. If you aren't already subscribed, I'd be grateful if you would subscribe. We are almost at 3,000 subscribers now, which is a miracle. Thank you. Thank you so much. Right then, so I'll say bye-bye for now, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Thanks for being here, and that's the final painting. Hope you enjoyed that. See you again soon. Bye.